Syed, your psychologist spirituality. I'm here sitting in my the private clinic that I'm working in for this semester, for this academic year, which I talked about more in this video. I've had some downtime working on the final piece of my dissertation. I will make a future video related to that. Also, shout out to the website psychexpert.com. I wanted to make this video as kind of a supplemental piece to this video series that I created, and especially this video on how Hollywood has portrayed religion, using the example of two shows that I just watched on Hulu. The first one being Dopesick, which illustrates the opioid epidemic as fueled by the Sackler family and the horrid consequences that that has wreaked on middle rural America and now the entire world. And then the second show being The Godfather of Harlem, which portrays the life of Bumpy Johnson, gangster in Harlem, and his interactions in the early 60s with the Italian mafia, the Bonanno family, Malcolm X, different politicians around that time. The two shows each have subplots which have to do with religiosity. So let's break it down using research, science, and then also arts and cinema to really look at the dichotomous portrayal and the nuances of religiosity and its impact on substance usage. With that, let's show this clip first.
In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, let her be free. Let her be free. Let her be free. Let her be free.
Let me be free.
Let her be free.
Let me be free. Let me be free.
Let her be free.
Let me be free.
Yes.
Pastor, I'm worried that this isn't gonna work for me.
Why is that?
I've never believed in any of this ever since I was a little girl.
But your folks told me you've been going to church your whole life.
I did it for them.
So Dopesick, one of the characters which we follow, is an opioid-addicted LGBTQ coal miner who comes from a religious family. She's from Appalachia, which, middle rural America, you would expect to be very religious. She is healed at the mid-season point during a religious revival, and she undergoes a character change, as shown in these clips, right? She's going for a run. She's in a better place than she was before. That is until she relapses. The point being that she never believed in the first place. She's never believed in an idea of God, or at least a Christian God. The show alluding to the fact that she would be better, perhaps even not addicted to opioids, if she were able to openly identify with her sexual orientation and live with her girlfriend, another character who moves to Arkansas where there's a more LGBTQ friendly community.
The worst thing that a parent could hear is that their kid is queer or gay or lesbian or whatever they say now. That'd kill me if you were, Beth. It'd absolutely kill me.
Well, I guess you're dead then.
This last point, before we talk about the religious piece, is substantiated in the social science literature, such as in this article that I'm showing right here, in which it says sexual minority adolescents residing in communities with more LGBTQ supports, i.e. having more supportive climates, have lower odds of lifetime illegal drug use for boys and girls, and marijuana use for girls and smoking for girls. Which goes back to a lot of the literature that has been done on why religiosity is a protective factor against substance usage, and a lot of that is just community supports, right? Having that overwhelming social support and social acceptance facilitates healthier psychological, social well-being. Yet the contrasting of religiosity is interesting because religion, and that means extrinsic and intrinsic religion, right? More details on those concepts in this video and the research that I'm putting in the description, is one of the strongest predictors of decreased substance and alcohol usage in the social sciences. And these are just a few articles. I've talked about this recurrently on this channel. There are hundreds of articles on PsycInfo, on Google Scholar. This is an article by Chitwood in 2008 looking at 105 studies, finding that the association between religiosity, spirituality, and reduced risk of substance abuse is well established. But a well-defined body of knowledge on this relationship has been slow to emerge. Going back to what most research studies usually indicate, and that's that we need better methodology, we need more precise instruments, we need a better understanding of religiosity means, we need more diverse populations, a broader spectrum of substances also, right? More research can always be done. Most studies always have that caveat at the end. This is another study which I included in my dissertation by Jung, looking at 22 studies in peer-reviewed journals between 1995 and 2007, finding an average weighted mean correlation of 0.16, which is a small to medium significant finding. And this was on adolescents. And as it says, this was the protective effects of religiosity are substantial on 4 types of substance abuse, namely alcohol, cigarette, marijuana, and other illicit drugs. The next one is a very comprehensive study by Ford and Terence Hill on a sample of almost 70,000 persons aged 12 and older, generated using state-based sampling, including all 50 states. As it states in the article, results show that religiosity reduces the odds of tobacco use, heavy drinking, prescription drug misuse, marijuana use, and other illicit drug use. These associations are partially explained by respondent and peer attitudes towards substance use, and to a lesser extent, respondent psychological well-being. The influence of respondent substance abuse attitude is especially pronounced, explaining between 41% of marijuana usage and 53% of tobacco usage of the association between religiosity and substance use, right? So that article is going more into the moderating mechanisms of action by which religiosity decreases substance usage, right? It provides values to people, right? It provides values to young people in this instance, and giving them that idea that, drugs are not safe, I don't want to consume drugs, that's not a part of my lived identity, right? In compiling some other research, I also found this article, which is very interesting, as it looks at religiosity amongst sexual orientations. And we can look at what it says. Religiosity measured at baseline had no significant effect on past year substance, measured 6 years later in sexual minority young adults. For heterosexual young adults, each unit increase in religiosity reduced the odds of binge drinking by 9%, marijuana usage by 20%, and cigarette smoking by 13%. Although going back to that initial study at hand, right, the one that I quoted at the beginning, LGBTQ youth who are in more supportive climates, right, tend to do better, right? And that stands true for anyone, right? Whatever your identity is, if you live in a community that nourishes and accepts you for who you are, chances that you won't start smoking crack are, it's pretty evident, right? As it relates to the character in the show Dopesick, someone being forced to be religious, we would expect relapses because that intrinsic motivation, right, that identification with that value is not there. But for me, relating to this video, as I talked about in the beginning, on how Hollywood has tended to portray religion, it's a case example of bad science and negative representation. There isn't a single mention in the entire 10-episode arc of this show, which documents the opioid crisis in rural and middle America, a place that's very highly religious, of religion being anything more than a fundamentalist strain. In fact, the mother even accuses herself at one point in the show that she feels that she is the cause of her daughter's addiction due to her faith. The point being that it doesn't have to be this dichotomous. The showrunners, the producers, didn't have to denigrate religiosity to uplift this character's sexual orientation. It's not that contrasting, right? Maybe it makes for a more, complicated character journey, right? But we would expect, and we have science, that religious communities in this part of the world have actually helped many people. And here's a very interesting portion of an article that I'm putting on Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And again, lots of the studies have found that the mechanisms of action by which Alcoholics Anonymous leads to decreased alcohol usage, and again, not just that negative aspect, right? If we're looking at it from a positive psychology standpoint, you cannot be an alcoholic, but you can also not be flourishing, right? We want to look at both domains. Not being an alcoholic, but also increased psychological well-being, increased mental health, increased social health, right? Alcoholics Anonymous leads to those changes through social, cognitive, and affective domains, right? But as it says in the article, it doesn't necessarily mean these aren't mobilized by spiritual changes as well, right? It's just that our measurements of spirituality, which is metaphysical, abstract, right? It's hard to pin down this term. It may be more difficult as opposed to more robust tools that we have to measure social, affective, psychological changes, right?
The question, the logic that would make you want to pull out a weapon on a cop when you got a shotgun in your ear already. But that didn't stop me. And figured that didn't stop me. I needed to try something that might. And I'm still hoping this is it. I mean, it's good so far, but well, hell, y'all know, it's one day at a time. You keep going best you can.
Let's contrast this portrayal in Dopesick with the character of Elise in The Godfather of Harlem, who is a crack and dope addict living in New York, who converts to Islam, and we see how this self-renewal leads to more than simply her not being addicted, but living an existence beyond herself. She gives back to her community, saving others who are facing addiction, instilling nobility, modesty, and self-discipline in her values. And we have this beautiful scene right here where she's praying Usr, which we can watch right here.
Stand up for our democratic ideals and religious heritage of those who have continued to block progress for the brown American.
In the Muslim faith, we pray 5 times a day. That was my afternoon prayer. Asr. I blamed you for a lot of mistakes I made. I blamed you for how unhappy I was. But I've taken responsibility for myself, and my faith has led the way, and I just want to thank you for letting Margaret back in my life.
And this is also shown in research, as I had talked about in this video right here, the differences between religiosity and spirituality. Religious people, for all the faults, we're not making it so dichotomous that religion is the salvation for all of humanity. But we know that religious people tend to give back to their community much more than even people who are spiritual but not religious, let alone the common person who's neither religious nor spiritual, right? Lots of the time that they give is in volunteering and helping other people. I know that to be the case related to my community, and shout out to this video and shout out to the Fifth Ward community, which has spent every weekend for the past 15 years housing, helping, sheltering individuals from this community, from their own community. And the only point that I'm making is that at least there's some nuance, right? They're not just portraying religion as like this holier than thou ideal, right? It is for this character, but in other ways it can lead to more fundamentalist attitudes, right? Whereas in the show Dopesick, which is a really great show on all other accounts, especially Michael Keaton's character, it really goes into the legal, political, social infrastructure of the opioid epidemic. I would highly recommend the show, right? But The show was scientifically accurate on so many other accounts, but it's a reflection of Hollywood, who, you know, individuals tend to be more liberal. Liberals tend to be much lower on religiosity, right? Which is why so many shows have these type of negative portrayals, right? But it's also illuminating and hopeful to see other shows such as The Godfather of Harlem. I mean, a show that has a character such as Malcolm X, you know, the Spike Lee movie Malcolm X, I've shown so many times in this video, one of my favorite films. It levels the playing field more, right?
It's all new to me. I'm trying to learn.
The theme of the nation is know thyself. It is the pathway to becoming whole again. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Elise. Sister Marnie.
The more we can highlight better portrayals, right? Religion being a mechanism that helps someone do better, right? In the same way that other shows have, you know, portrayed, you know, falling in love or finding a new career or finding a new passion, whatever a person's hero's journey is, whatever the protagonist's hero's journey is, right? They have some sort of tool which utilizes their higher character virtues, right? For them to defeat the antagonist at the end, right? Religion can be one of those components, as it is for Malcolm X, as it is for this character, as it is for the billions of people who subscribe to a metaphysical understanding of the world, right? So, again, I just wanted to relate the downtime that I have at this clinic right here that I'm working at. These two portrayals, these two shows that I recently watched, and relating it to some research as well. The links in the description to all the peer-reviewed journals that I talked about. Let me know what you think. As I said, I recommend both of the shows, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you all so much.